Okay, good morning, everybody. I think let's kick off. If there's anybody else that's going to join the meeting, um, they will just be able to come in. Lindy, I don't know if you want to say anything else. If not, we can kick off. Just a reminder again, if anybody else didn't hear me, we are recording this meeting. Your teams would have told you that the meeting is recorded. Okay, so for today's meeting, we're going to look at the Swaziland tube fitting advantage and the big three contributors that add to our tube fitting and why it works so well. Okay, so what drives our advanced performance? So firstly, it's uncompromising performance is only possible when you have high quality raw materials and the manufacturing process. So you will see as we go through the presentation later on, you will see how we specify all of our materials and why we have superior material choices for our fittings. The unique design and the pro performance features, and then an in-depth technical understanding and the robust product validation. So you will see some of the testing we do and also all the design features of our fitting. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to ask or just put a question in the chat. We can have a look at it in the chat. If there's anything, we'll look at it at the end. Okay, so the three factors that we take into account when we talk about tube fittings, first off is tube grip, secondly is the gas seal, and then lastly is your vibration protection. So we'll look at them in that order, and I'll explain them as we go along. Okay, so firstly, if we look at tube grip, so with our tube fitting, our back ferrule does all of the tube gripping. So if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, you will see the blue ferrule on the left. So that's our back ferrule. So it uses a hinging and colleting action, and that provides more direct tube contact and tube gripping support. So other than original or previous generations of tube fittings, where you basically make contact with your back ferrule by biting into the wall, this back ferrule now hinges in the center. So if you guys can see my mouse, in the center of this back ferrule, you basically have a compression and a hinging action taking place, making our back ferrule grip onto the tube and holding onto it. So this gives us our tube grip as well as our vibration resistance. So because of our design, we have more material to work with. So this gives us direct actual support, and then also it's a colleting squeeze. So much more of the material actually grips and holds onto the tube than the traditional ferrules, where it was a bow and biting action, and your front ferrule would almost penetrate the side of your tube wall in some instances. Okay, so here you can see when we look at the tube grip basically contains the system fluid, and you want it without leakage at your maximum working pressure to maintain both the grip and the seal. So here you can see with a single ferrule bite-tight fitting, so the picture on the left-hand side, the only contact you make with your tube is where that front end of your front ferrule, that leading edge, basically bites into the side of your tube, and then where it makes contact with the inside of the fitting body, so the top part over here where my mouse is, that's basically, so one ferrule has to do the tube grip as well as the sealing. Okay, if you look at this, the one on the right-hand side, this was more later design. This is basically where you have twin ferrules, but you still have your back ferrule penetrating the wall, and then you rely on your front ferrule biting into the tube as well, giving you the seal. So this is a little better, but you still have that high stress zone that gets applied to the side of your tube wall. Okay, so if we look at our Swaziland tube fitting, like I mentioned to you earlier, we use the hinging colleting tube grip fitting. So we don't have that biting action into the tube wall, not with our front or back ferrule. So we don't put any additional stresses onto our the tube or onto our fitting. So all of the stresses gets handled by our back ferrule, which basically hinges where that yellow arrow is pointing, and then ends up gripping the tube, pushing our front ferrules forward, which also grips onto the tube to form a seal onto your tube as well as seal into the inside of that fitting body. Okay, so like I said, our gas seal takes place on the front ferrule. So what actually happens is when you tighten up your tube fitting, at the end of the presentation, you will see a step-by-step guide on how to install a Swaziland tube fitting. But as you tighten up that tube fitting to the correct amounts of turn, you actually have a burnishing or a polishing action of the front ferrule that creates a concentrated zone of contact on the tube and on the inside of that fitting bevel to give you a much stronger seal. So that's why it's important that you have proper tube grip from your back ferrule to make sure it doesn't let go and your front ferrule lets go of the tube, and that where it basically, if you look at those yellow lines, where it forms your gas seal to make sure you don't have any system leakage. Okay, so like I mentioned in the beginning, it's important that you use a very high quality material when you're making your tube fitting manufacturing process. So with Swagelok, we spec a higher alloy content than required by ASTM A479. Okay, so for stainless steel, the minimum nickel content, if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, for you to conform to 316 stainless steel, you have to have a minimal nickel content of 10%, ranging up to 14%, and you have to have chrome from 16 to 18%. Okay, so you will see as Swagelok, we spec our nickel to be at 12%, and we spec our chrome to be at 17%. So much higher than the requirements of ASTM for 316 stainless steel. Now, the reason for this is not only does it give the fitting a better material makeup, but it also assures corrosion resistance against hydrogen. So you don't get hydrogen embrittlement or stress corrosion cracking, and it also protects that fitting against sulfides found in the offshore environment. So all of this, it gives you a much higher integrity of the material. So you're guaranteed of a good seal as well as a great product. Okay, so what creates a leak tight fitting?
Sorry,
so as we
Reno,
yes.
before you continue, there is a hand up.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, first of all, thanks to the Swagelok team for arranging this seminar to the team. It is a very good topic. And I don't know whether I can raise a concern now because you came now with the material composition. So we are facing a lot of issues with the water clarifier. Okay. Our tubes is having a fitting pinhole leaks from the tubing and the leaks from the ferrule fitting. So what you suggest for this?
Okay, so firstly, we'll have to look at what sort of material. So do you use 316 stainless steel? Then also, if you look at your tubing, is your tubing a bright and new tubing? So is it nice and shiny, or is it pickled where you get a tube that's almost like a dull gray color? Because all of those factors play a role in what could happen to you by getting that pitting corrosion. And then also, does your corrosion only happen on the side of the tube, or do you also see it where you have tube supports and those sort of things? So all of this contributes to what makes a tube basically get a pin or leaking underneath the fitting. So what contributes to this is, if it's under a clamp, we basically call it crevice corrosion. Now, what happens to stainless steel is 316 stainless steel is reliant on the oxygen in the air. So as soon as you deprive it from oxygen, so you add something like a clamp to it, where you basically cut off its oxygen supply, if I can call it that, you basically take the passive oxide layer away, which gives stainless steel its corrosion resistance properties. And that's where the corrosion starts underneath, like clamps and things like that. But then if you look at just the tubes, if you get pitting corrosion, it can be due to low chromium and low nickel. Because if it's in an offshore environment, there's a lot of chlorides in the air. So the chlorides in the air basically attacks your tube. And if you sit with lower chrome and lower nickel content, you will get those pinholes on your tube. So you either need to go for a higher quality stainless steel tubing, or if it's in an offshore environment, you can answer me this, but you can also go to more austenitic stainless steel, so like a 904L or 6 moly. So they are a lot more expensive than your standard 316 tubes that you just use. But your lifetime expectancy for them in an offshore environment can reach up to 30 years compared to estimated 7 to 10 years in, for 316 stainless steel. And it could be shorter by the sounds of what you're explaining.
Yeah, but for other chemicals, it is not happening. Only with the water clarifier. Maybe it is because of the chemical properties. So it is not fitting under the clamp. It is somewhere else where there is no other metal in contact with it. So just give us just give me the specifications which can be used for the water clarifier chemical, only for water clarifier chemical. Okay.
Okay, so what I suggest is, can we set up a meeting next week, and we can go through your specific application. If you just leave me your email address in the chat, we'll arrange a meeting with you next week, and then we can discuss it at length. That would be probably better.
Okay, well noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's no other questions, let's continue. Okay, so what creates a leak pipe fitting? So like I showed you before, the Swagelok tube fitting has a unique back ferrule, which is called the hinging colleting action. So because I told you earlier, we use a lot more material in our back ferrule because we don't rely on that back ferrule to basically make a bow and then bite into the tube with that leading edge of the front ferrule. So with more material, we get more direct axial support. We get that colleting squeeze, like I told you. Then it protected stress riser. So I'll show you some picture of this later. But we basically don't have that stress riser. If you look at the two pictures at the top, where that leading edge of those ferrules bite into the tube. If you do a vibration test of one of those two ferrules, the tube will actually fracture or crack right at that leading edge of that front ferrule. Where you will see later on, I'll show you what a vibration test looks like. Our fitting protects our front leading edge of our back ferrule, and the crack always happens somewhere after our back ferrule. So our ferrules doesn't have an effect on the integrity of your tube. Okay, and then the way the ferrule works, it also gives you a lot lower pull-up torque. So if you look at the original and more traditional fittings, they require quite a high torque value to tighten them up. Where if you take our fittings, in some instances, 2 to 3 times less torque to tighten the same size fitting with the same amount of turns. Okay, so here you can just see that stress riser again. So if you do, like I said, the vibration test, they generally break right where those two tips of those ferrules, the one on the yellow and the one on the red, both in the yellow circles, they will generally break right on that weakness point where you bite into that tube. Okay, so vibration resistance, the colleting region better isolates the stress riser at the tube grip to resist bending, deflection, and vibration. So because we have a much greater area of grip onto the tube, you will see now in the video that's coming up, we do a vibration holding test. So here you can see we used a half-inch tube with 0.35 wall thickness stainless steel. The alternating stress that we're going to put onto it is basically equivalent to 1,140 bar. Working pressure will be 180 bar, so the system will be under a constant 180 bar. The offset that you'll see in the video now, the rotor spins at 3,500 revolutions per minute, and the criteria for passage is greater than 10 million cycles. So basically, let me just get the video to start. So here you can see what the deflection looks like when the rotor spins. So it causes a set offset. You can see as we start off, so this whole system will be under 180 bar, which is the working pressure. And there you can see the vibration that's caused. You'll also see on the right-hand side now how fast it actually is when it's at full speed. So it's quite a hectic vibration that gets put onto this tube to simulate similar vibrations that we will see in plants from pumps and compressors and all sorts of rotating equipment that's constantly moving on sites. So for us to complete one of these tests, like I said, it's a 10 million cycle spin. There should be no leaks and no cracks. And it takes about 3 days to complete a test like that. If you are interested, we can send you the full test report. So this is basically what the test report tells you. So it gives you all the offsets, how to do the test, where your vibration range is, the number of cycles, and how you pass it. So the rotary flexion results has to conform to ASTM B31J, like you can see on the top here. Okay, so with this full test report, you can see all the tubes that were tested, if they passed or not. So if you're interested, you can let us know in the chat and we can always send you the full test report afterwards. Okay, so we have a patent on our back ferrule. So you can see it's important to choose consistency of your product. So you want the expert design, proper metallurgy, and also the performance testing to make sure when you put that fitting into your system or your plant or wherever you're going to use it on an offshore rig, you want to be sure that when you pull that fitting up, and you'll see how simple it is a bit later, you want to be sure that you're going to get 100% seal of whatever media is running through that system. Okay, so here you can see the picture from the left is called the hinging colleting action. So we do a FEA test on it. So it's finite element analysis. So with finite element analysis, we can actually see if there's any high stress areas within a fitting. Okay. So as soon as the color on a tube changes to yellow or red, it's a really high stress area. So if you look at our pull-up fitting where my mouse is now, you will see where the front ferrule or the back ferrule's leading edges, there's only a green mark showing lower stress. If you look at a traditional fitting, you will see where that back ferrule grips on, it's a yellow mark. Okay, so if you do a vibration holding test, that fitting will always break right at that yellow mark over there. So here you can see where the crack will be. Okay, so if we take one of our fittings and we do a vibration holding test for failure, the crack is always behind our high stress area. So if you look at the picture on the right hand side, you can actually see the stress riser, which is the green line. And then, so from the colleting region, it's from the red to the green line. And then you can actually see the crack. So the crack is far out of where we actually grip onto the tube. So you can see our fitting is fully supported by the back ferrule and the front ferrule. So the crack happens outside of the fitting and not inside the fitting itself. Okay, so like I mentioned in the beginning, there's a really easy way how to pull up a Swager tube fitting. So it's really size dependent, but we'll talk about the most common one because most people use fittings starting from 1/4 inch all the way to 2 inch or from 6 mil all the way to 50 mil. Use one standard pull-up instruction, and then we'll talk about the smaller sizes fittings in a lab, and you use smaller sizes, there's a slightly different procedure. Okay, so if we look at step 1, it says insert the tubing into the tube fitting. Okay. So important thing to do when you insert it is you can either use a depth marking tool. If you're interested in how all of this work, we have a full 2-day training course that we certify customers in on fitting insulation and tube bending. So if you're interested in that, you're more than welcome to leave us a comment in the chat, and we'll get back to you with all the information. But the good practice is to put your tube into your tube fitting. What you need to make sure of is that you put that tube all the way into the fitting until it hits the mechanical stop. So here where my mouse is at this moment, that will be the mechanical stop. So you want that tube to go all the way in until it bottoms against that mechanical shoulder or mechanical stop inside of that fitting. Okay. So then once we've done that, we make sure our nut is tightened finger tight, so just by hand. Once you've got it finger tight, you will make a mark at the 6 o'clock position. Okay. And what you do to tighten up this fitting is you give it 1 1/4 turns. So what do I mean by 1 1/4 turns? So if we start at 6 o'clock on the right-hand side here where my mouse is, we will rotate the nut all the way around back to the 6 o'clock position. That will be 1 full turn, and then we'll continue on and stop at 9 o'clock. Okay. So if you start from 6 o'clock, you will rotate 1 complete rotation, and then past the 6 o'clock mark all the way to 9 o'clock. That gives you that 1 1/4 turn. Once you've done that, that fitting has been pulled up sufficient. Vibration holding seal is in place. It's a leak tight connection. Okay. So like I mentioned earlier, there's a few different or smaller sizes that need a little bit less of a pull-up. When you use them in labs, for instance, they're not generally used in big process plants. So if we use 1/16, 1/8, and 3/16, if you look at the blue banner at the bottom, or we use 2, 3, and 4 millimeter tubes, they only require a 3/4 turn or 3/4 pull-up. So if we start at 6 o'clock again, like we did with the previous one, we'll rotate the nut. But once we get to the 3 o'clock position over here, you can see it says 3/4 of a turn, that fitting will be sufficiently pulled up. Now with our fittings, they are actually gaugeable fittings. So what do we mean by our fitting is gaugeable? So with our fitting, once you've done that pull-up, and you've rotated the nuts from 6 o'clock to the 9 o'clock position or to the 3 o'clock position, if you have one of these gap gauges, you can actually check that fitting and inspect it to be certain that it's been tightened up sufficiently. Okay. So with these gauges, when you install them into a fitting, if you've done the correct amount of turns, that gauge will not fit into the gap between the nut and your fitting body. If you under tightened it for some reason, let's say you didn't make a mark, or you had people, contractors, for instance, install the fittings and you want to double check whether it was done correctly, you can literally just take your gauge and go check each and every nut. So if your gauge still fits in between the nut and the fitting body, like you can see at the picture on the right-hand side, that fitting needs to be tightened up a little bit more to make sure you get to a point that it looks like the fitting on the left-hand side where the gauge does not fit into that gap. Okay, so like I said, our fitting is gaugeable. So for any size of tube fitting we sell, you can find the gauge to double check that it's been pulled up correctly, and you know that it's going to be leak tight and your vibration holding seal will be met. Now, when we look at tube fittings in general, there is a lot of tube fittings out there. At the moment, we know of about 64 different manufacturing companies that make tube fittings, and you can see they tend to look quite similar. Okay, so there's some slight changes. So some of them will have, for instance, a black nut. The black nut means it's a single ferrule fitting. Some guys put some of these little marks on their nuts. Some nuts are larger than others. So they might look very much the same, but it's important to make sure and verify when you install a tube fitting that all the parts belong to the same manufacturer. So I'm going to play you a short video that explains why it's important not to mix tube fittings. So that's why it's better to have one standard on your site. So your technicians or your artisans that install these fittings don't get confused by using different brands and mixing them up.